Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Marie Holiday, and today is Tuesday, November 17, 2020. And before we get into this next lecture, I just want to remind everyone, if you have not subscribed, to please support and subscribe to my channel. I do want to thank all of my viewers and my subscribers for blocking out time out of your life to view my videos, to support my channel. And again, I look at my analytics and I see that I have a lot of viewers who have not subscribed. So please share this information, subscribe, support my channel, my YouTube channel. You can easily pull me up on YouTube. My channel name is Marie Holiday. Subscribe and hit that subscribe button. So with that being said, let's get on into the next topic. I'm going to do this lecture in about 4 different lectures, 4 different parts. And the topic of this lecture is I'm going to talk about what is the early stages of addiction, the early signs, because the disease of alcoholism or drug addiction is a progressive disease that develops over time. And before I get into talking about what are the early stages of alcoholism or drug addiction or gambling addiction, I want to share with the audience that, my specialty, I do specialize in assessing and treating people who suffer from alcoholism, drug addiction, gambling addiction. I'm credentialed as an expert in 3 different states. I've been in this field for over 20 years, so I'm going to introduce the science side of addiction in everyday language. So this lecture is going to be focusing on what is the early stages. What is the early stages of addiction? And I'm going to give some examples of the early stages of addiction. First of all, what we in the field will see is the person will begin in the early stages. They will begin to they will begin to sneak drinking or use of other drugs. They're gonna conceal it. They're gonna hide it from friends and loved ones in terms of the severity of their drinking, how often they drink or use. So they're gonna sneak and hide their alcohol or drug use in the early stages of addiction. Another indication of the early stages of alcoholism or drug addiction is the person now is going to become preoccupied with alcohol use, drug use, gambling addiction, or any high-risk behavior. They're going to become preoccupied with their alcohol or drug use. And what I mean by preoccupation, that's similar to mental obsession. They can be at work, or they can be at home in a family function, or at home spending time with family. But what preoccupation means is physically they're there, but mentally they are not there. Mentally, their mind is on focusing on what processes and what steps they got to do to continue with the alcohol or drug use. Thinking about and worrying about do they have enough supply of their alcohol or drug use? Preoccupied on maybe going to meet the dope men to purchase more drugs to consume their substance of choice. So preoccupation they can be at work, home, or school. Physically they're there, but mentally their mind is focusing more on what they got to do to feed that addiction. So that's preoccupation, that begin to see that in the early stages of addiction. Another indicator of the early stages of addiction, the person will gulp their alcoholic beverage. They will gulp their alcoholic drink, or they will rapidly use their drug of choice. So in the early stages of addiction, they will gulp that alcohol, or they will rapidly use their drug of choice. And those are indications of being in the early stages of addiction. Another indicator of the early stages of addiction is the person will avoid reference to alcohol or other drug use. For example, if a family member or a loved one or supported friend may begin to observe the person alcohol or drug use beginning to get excessive, missed days at work, then that loved one or that family member may sit down and tell that person, I'm concerned about your behavior. I'm concerned about the alcohol use, drug use. So they're going to want to avoid any reference to their high-risk behavior. They're going to want to avoid any reference to someone talking to them about out of concern about the alcohol or drug use. Another indication of the early stages of addiction is the person will begin to experience memory blackouts. And let me explain to the audience on the science of addiction when we talk about memory blackouts. And what causes the blackout is when a person uses excessive alcohol or drugs consuming in the body. Then what the body does, the body responds to alcohol and drugs like a toxin, like poison. So when the use becomes so high, that induces the alcohol or drug-related memory blackout. They can still be performing skills, still be having a conversation, but they won't have any recollection of that conversation. And a few days later, someone may tell that person, well, don't you remember having this conversation at such and such time? Don't you remember doing this at such and such time? And the person will literally scratch their head, be thinking, no, I don't remember saying these things. I don't remember doing these things, because actually they had so much alcohol or drugs in the body, it induces the memory blackout. But you're still performing skills, but you don't have any recollection of those skills or that conversation that you had. And that's an indication of a alcohol or drug related memory blackout. You know, many people have reported they've gone out having a great time, excessive alcohol use, excessive drug use, and they were at that club, and by the time they got ready to go home, they literally put the keys in the car and literally would say they literally don't even remember driving home, but somehow the car ended up in the driveway. That's a good example of a memory blackout. Another indication of the early stages of addiction, we will begin to see an increase in tolerance for alcohol or other drugs. And what tolerance is the more and more the alcohol or drugs that the person uses, it's going to take more and more to receive the same effect. That's a clear indication of increase in tolerance. Another sign of early stages of alcoholism or drug addiction is we will begin to see drink or use before or after social occasions. The person will begin to drink or use before or after social occasions. They may drink or use before going to that club. They may drink or use before going to that family function. They may drink and use before going to that concert. That's a clear example of being in the early stages of addiction. Another indication of early stages of addiction is the person will begin to use alcohol or other drugs for relief, attention, anxiety, depression, stress. So they will begin to use alcohol or other drugs for relief, attention, depression, or stress. That's another indication of the early signs of alcoholism or drug addiction. And those are just some indicators of being in the early stages of addiction. Pay attention, audience, because now since I've introduced the early stages of addiction, in my next upload, I'm going to indicate to the audience what are the middle stages of addiction. If I just introduce the early stages, then there's a middle stage, and then there's a late stage, and then there's a late stage. So if you want to get insight on the middle stages of addiction, I'm going to do another upload or later on this week. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. Again, I wanted to thank my subscribers and my viewers for blocking out time out of your life to support my channel. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, y'all know how I like to end it. With that being said, don't forget, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button. Simplify, Simple Fidelis, and have a great afternoon.